Here's a Donald Trump call for a ban of all Muslims entering this country.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We can't live like this. It's going to get worse and worse. You're going to have more World Trade Centers. It's going to get worse and worse, folks. We can be politically correct and we can be stupid, but it's going to get worse and worse.
Well, that was Donald Trump warning of more attacks unless something is done. And his solution right now, ban all Muslims entering this country, a temporary moratorium. But we've got breaking news for you on that right now. The House has just passed a bill to overhaul its federal visa waiver program. Now, this legislation will tighten controls on visa-free travel to the United States. Of course, the impetus was the Paris attacks. Anyone who has been in Iraq or Syria for the past 5 years would need a visa, an actual visa, to enter the country. The bill receiving very wide bipartisan support. In fact, the final vote, 407 to 19. Love to find out what the heck those 19 are thinking about. Anyway, the question is could this be good enough for Donald Trump? Joining me now, Katrina Pierson, Trump National Spokeswoman. Katrina, Donald Trump says all Muslims from around the world, and, you know, of course, we do business with a lot of Muslims in places like Abu Dhabi or Indonesia and places like that where there hasn't been this sort of radical Islam element. And many are saying, why wouldn't it be sufficient, including, I think, Ted Cruz, to narrow it down to areas that we know are trouble spots?
Well, thank you, Charles. And I think it would be. And just to put this in context, this was an immigration policy. The headline was immigration, Muslim immigration. So actually, he wants to stop immigration. If you're a United States citizen, this does not apply to you. So this has sort of been contorted throughout the media. But he made that very clear last night on Fox News, again today on Good Morning America, and all throughout these interviews. This is just for Muslims trying to immigrate to the country.
Okay, but again, if you had a Muslim person who was trying to immigrate to America from, let's say, Abu Dhabi, you're saying the risks are too high for someone like that who perhaps we could have good records keeping on. We've got a pretty good relationship with that country. Certainly a lot of economic transactions between us and there. I think even Donald Trump may have some business interests there. Even someone like that would be put on the sideline until our representatives could find a better way.
Well, absolutely. The moratorium is very simple. It's just it's a halt, because we know that there are these things like you just talked about in breaking news. There are mechanisms that people are looking at in Congress proposing with regards to refugees and the visa system. After San Bernardino, we saw a K-1 visa, someone that flew through with flying colors, come in and wage jihad here in America. So he's just saying, yes, let's just halt everything for right now from Muslim nations and then wait until these processes are put in. Now, if we're talking about leaders or people that have business interests, there are going to be ways to appeal that process. This is just for general immigration of Muslims into this country.
So what do you make of the widespread condemnation that's coming from actually both sides of the aisle on this, that perhaps Donald Trump has gone too far, that this is sort of an attack on the very first principle of America, which is religious freedom?
Well, I mean, we have all the right enemies, and, you know, this isn't an attack on religious freedom because you don't have the freedom of jihad in this country, and you also don't have a constitutional right as a foreign national to immigrate to this country. So, again, I think it's just this Donald Trump is forcing the hand of these legislators who have done absolutely nothing with regard to the visa program and immigration, for that matter, in this country, and now you see them having to do something about it.
So, speaking of which, forcing a hand on these legislators, when Donald Trump talks about this being a temporary program, there's so many temporary programs that come out of the federal government that are now 10, 20, 30 years old, whether it's raising the debt ceiling or the doctor fix. What's the idea that something like this does not necessarily become permanent? What is temporary?
Well, I mean, if you look in the past, you know, this country in its lifetime has never, ever allowed insurgents into the country during wartime. We are in a time of war. You know, when the FBI Director Comey says, no, it's not safe, when you have the Counterterrorism Center saying, no, it's not safe, I think we could use those metrics. But I do believe if we get a handle on who's in this country, as you know, 40% of people in this country illegally are here on overstayed or expired visas. The World Trade Center bombers, exact same thing. So we have to be vigilant. We have to secure our borders. We have to look at our immigration position because we're not enforcing current immigration laws as we speak. So we have to put these things in place, and then once FBI director says, yes, we have these processes in place, or the counterterrorism unit says, now we know how to track refugees coming into the country. But more importantly, with regards to refugees, Charles, they don't want to come here, and it's far cheaper for the United States to resettle them in their homeland than to bring them to the country.
Yeah, I get that with refugees and people who are fleeing those sort of conditions, but again, we're talking about a ban on all Muslim immigrants, not just those fleeing violence in Syria, but you know, those who just want to move here. Here's the thing, is Donald Trump essentially saying that if you're Muslim, you're guilty first until you can prove your innocence?
No, Donald Trump is saying it's time that we put the lives of American families first, because every time we've seen something similar to this, you've seen Americans get demonized. Look at what happened in San Bernardino. You had Americans killed by jihadists, by radical Islamic extremists, and the response of this administration is to criminalize Americans. And that just doesn't make any sense at all. What Donald Trump is saying, not all Muslims are bad, but jihad only exists in Muslim areas.